Folks, if I'm ever killed, please don't let Nancy Pelosi thank me for dying. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ruthless.
Democrats are set to take control of the U.S. Senate, House, and the White House.
This will go down as one of the most progressive administrations in American history.
God willing, everything is on the table.
You now can pass things without a filibuster threat. That's right.
Oh, you'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Well, Smug, we will see to it. I promise. We will see to it that the Speaker of the House keeps your name out of her mouth.
Yeah, I mean, what a take. I mean, there were so many takes. There were billions of takes. But I think the wildest of all is Nancy Pelosi thanking someone for being murdered. Being like, hey, I mean, good job. We're thank you for dying so then I can be up here giving a press conference. Oh,
we're gonna get into that a little bit later because she wasn't the only one that basically had a similar take. But I gotta be honest, I'm dragging, man. I got the second Moderna, and boy, oh boy.
Yep.
I mean, I think you were worse off after the Egyptian flu, but I don't know.
It was jet lag. But let me tell you,
jet lag.
Let me tell you, if you could take like a shot that prevented jet lag, I would take that. I would take that shot in a heartbeat.
I gotta say, Holmes, you definitely sound better than Smug did when he came
after
back
jet
from
lag,
Egypt with the worst case of jet lag in history.
Very bad jet lag, folks.
It's shallow breathing.
Yeah.
It was. Can we just say it was COVID? I feel like Smug had COVID.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Did you ever get a test?
I mean, I've gotten my first shot. That's all I'm saying. I got another shot on Friday. I am happy that thank you, President Trump, and Project, is it Lightspeed or Warp Speed? One of the speeds.
Either speed. But the important part is the HIPAA regulations prevent you from sharing anything about your health.
Exactly. Thank you, HIPAA. Thank you, President Trump. I'm just glad. I really feel like in terms of the U.S. at least, the silver lining, it's more than a silver lining at this point. You're seeing how great a job President Trump did with his approach as opposed to Europe, who things aren't looking the best over there, but
now they look terrible. I actually read a thing about India that looks absolutely catastrophic. Like really,
folks,
really
it's a tough,
really bad. I mean, so, look, we're breaking out of that. It doesn't mean that you can't have some side effects to the second shot. Everybody should get it. And if this is a day long, God, is it worth it? But man, it's the
interesting thing is I've heard about the second Moderna shot is that the younger and healthier you are, the more you feel, like body aches and stuff, because you have like a great immune system that's just like going ham. Like, let's roll.
I'm going to take that.
Me, I'm like, listen, I bet Moderna would be so chill hanging out with me. You'd be like, yeah, dude. Immune system rolls up and it's like, we could just grab a drink. There's plenty on the way.
Yeah. No, Moderna gets infected with you.
There you go.
Yeah. So, all right. So there are a bunch of bad news this week and a bunch of good news this week. We want to cover a little bit of everything. But I think that the best place to start is on something that we covered a couple of weeks ago with WinRed, when we got a precursor from the fake news media about all of the attacks on WinRed and that they were trying to undermine the credibility of it. Ultimately, they reported today that they raised a absolute record $124 million of donations to Republican candidates and committee in the first quarter.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's
That's what I'm talking about.
It's
when
incredible.
we discuss like how we want that culture on our side that the left developed of like, if you're mad, don't just be mad. They hit the act blue button. Now we have the win red button. Let's go. Because at the end of the day, like I said, pointing out hypocrisy of the left won't get it done. We got to win seats.
Well, you've got the media that has a pretty orchestrated campaign to try to stop, companies and PACs from donating to Republicans. Yeah. Okay, fine. We have a grassroots army ready to go to WinRed to donate. And here's the thing, guys. That's how we should want it.
Right.
It makes our politics better to have grassroots conservatives from across the country chipping in to these campaigns.
Yeah, I'm totally surprised. I don't know why the media would attack
Yeah.
a company that helps Republicans
Yeah,
do
big
grassroots
surprise.
fundraising. Shocked.
Well, I mean, we talked about it before. Remember, they were attacking server companies for hosting Parler. They're trying to get people kicked out of the Apple App Store, all sorts of things. They will deplatform conservatives any way that they can. And it's the same reason they attacked WinRed. And if you remember, their core attack was that WinRed has a recurring feature on their pages that allows you to chip in monthly. And the reason why that's really important for Republican campaigns is it allows them to plan ahead and to know what sort of revenue that they're going to have for the campaign. The media and the Democrats don't want you to own a part of these campaigns. They don't want us to be grassroots funded because they want to be able to attack us.
That's right. That's 100% right.
Huge congrats to WinRed, and good job to the grassroots. We got to keep this enthusiasm rolling.
One last thing I want to say on this, I would encourage anybody who listens to the program that if you could do me a favor and just go to WinRed now. This isn't an ad, by the way. I'm just saying this because it's what I do for a living. But go to WinRed now and just find, one candidate, 2 candidates, 3 candidates, that you support that are up this cycle and go and donate to them right now. And if you can, if you can afford it, if you can afford $5 a month or $10 a month, give it to them on recurring, because it helps these campaigns right now get ready for next year. And that early money is critical. That early grassroots money really, really does make a difference for these campaigns. That's it. I'm off my soapbox.
No, I appreciate it because we got to beat back the dumbassery in the White House and in Congress at every possible turn. And speaking of dumbassery, the thing that popped up that really caught my eye this week that I thought was so funny was the White House is exploring whether to make tobacco companies reduce nicotine levels in cigarettes, making them so low that cigarettes wouldn't be addictive.
This is so dumb, man. This is, I saw this and I genuinely, I took a deep sigh. So as a former smoker, let me tell you, this is the exact opposite approach you want to take. It's like, okay, so now I got to smoke more. That's the message is like, okay, you got to smoke more, folks. This isn't about, typically these syntaxes think that they can alter behavior or whatever. This isn't going to cause anyone who's a smoker to be like, oh, I'm going to evaluate my health decisions. No, you're going to make people have to go back. You see this with crack dealers. They will cut their supply in half so they can make more money and people will still buy that shit. The same way that you're thinking less nicotine. You're just going to get people to smoke more cigarettes. Good job.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I've kind of looked into a lot of this stuff. I worked in a state that was a tobacco state for a long time. And so I paid kind of close attention to the policy. I mean, the reality is the amount of smokers in this country is going down every single year, right? And the people who start, with the exception of this vaping craze in the last couple of years, the people who've actually started smoking is also continuing to go down. So you don't need, the social reality itself is curbing cigarette smoking. If you take nicotine out of cigarettes, the only thing you're going to do is force a smoker to basically suck on the back of an exhaust pipe for the next, however long they live. That's basically it.
Also, I just want to say, this view does not represent anyone or my employer or anyone for that matter, but cigarettes are so cool. Like just when you're smoking a cigarette, that's why the cool guy in the movie or the awesome lady in the movie, they have a cigarette. Humphrey Bogart, all the Clint Eastwood, all the really cool people smoke. All the cool people smoke. And when you're smoking, if you're just outside the bar smoking, people walk by, you're like, whoa, this guy's kind of cool. This is your first thought. When you see someone smoking, you're like, this guy's kind of cool.
Such a hot take.
And let me tell you, man, I miss those. That's the one thing, folks, everyone who's an adult, children don't smoke, but if you're an adult, you make the decision, whatever. Man, I miss those Parliament lights. They hit so nicely. You'll never, even after you quit, you'll miss them, folks.
It's was not intended to be an endorsement for smoking.
Absolutely not an endorsement whatsoever.
I'm sort of sorry I brought it up, but it is entertaining. So I'll give it that. Listen, I was trying to keep it classy on the program today because we have a very classy guest, Senator Mike Lee of Utah.
Huge.
One of the world's nicest guys. He's also polite, everything you don't find in Washington, right? He's just like a world-class guy. And so I was trying to class up the joint a little bit. And here we are in the first talking, endorsing smoking. Sorry, Senator Lee. I'm sorry. But he's gonna join us. He has some rabid hot takes, like great stuff on Major League Baseball, which we've been talking about on the program. Supreme Court. Which
I heard he had a great take for the Supreme Court.
He did.
You'll have to wait, folks. You'll have to wait for that interview.
Like you're involved in the take. So
excellent take.
Yeah. But he also gives us just a ton of great stuff. He's a good guy. So look forward to that. But we also have to tackle the topic of the week, which in my view is just so depressing in every possible way that I don't quite know exactly how to get into it. But obviously the verdict with Derek Chauvin being guilty on all counts. I haven't talked to anybody that I know that doesn't agree with the verdict. I think that the case for those of us who watched it, I mean, the man was guilty and the justice system worked. But of course, immediately that is jumped on by the woke left because you can't actually concede that justice was served in this case. And I know, Duncan, I know you have some thoughts because you've been following this all week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say number one, the takes last night on Twitter were just terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. You had Nancy Pelosi with her press conference, as Smug mentioned, basically thanking George Floyd for dying.
Unbelievable.
You had the Raiders brand account tweeting out an image that says "I can breathe."
It's just so bad. Like you can't even make up how bad it is.
You had that mayor Jacob Fry from Minneapolis saying that, quote, George Floyd came to Minneapolis to better his life, but ultimately his life will have bettered our city.
I mean, just think about how out of touch these guys are.
I mean, that's the thing is it's absolutely shameful because they didn't consider this a case about a guy losing his life. It's like they didn't even consider him a person. They considered him like a press conference. That's all he meant to them, to be like, thank you for dying.
It's a political.
So I can make the statement. That's like, this is a human being. Like that's like beyond ridiculous. It's unreal. Someone could even think that.
Well, I think ultimately here, Derek Chauvin being found guilty on all counts sort of complicated things for the left. It's kind of a problem because, key to their narrative is that America is irredeemably and systemically racist.
Yeah.
Which is why you saw people like AOC last night saying, quote, this isn't justice.
Right.
And, she also said, I don't want this to be framed as the system working, because the justice system can't work in order for them to advance their liberal political project. They need to stoke perpetual racial outrage in this country. I mean, look at the Georgia election law. That's Jim Crow. The filibuster, that's Jim Crow too. If you say that the justice system worked, then the rest of your claims don't hold sway anymore, right?
That's right.
And so, this sort of has them a little bit off kilter, I think, with their talking points, unfortunately, in a terrible situation.
Yeah. Well, and it's even actually darker and worse than that, because you have, many in the media and in the sort of woke left activist community attempting to create another George Floyd situation, right? And there was this horrible incident in Columbus with a young girl who was shot. And in the first couple hours of the story about how she was shot by a police officer, it was all about her age, and that this was another sort of unarmed person who was shot by police. Well, it turns out she was stabbing someone. She was attempting to stab another young girl, and that was completely omitted from the coverage. And in fact, didn't you say, Duncan? Did you say that Twitter in their sort of what's trending thing has this entire workup about this?
Right. Yeah. Twitter will curate these topics. You've probably seen these on the platform before, where ostensibly they're supposed to be sharing sort of the top line, what you need to know about an issue here. But what they've done in their coverage of this, police shooting is basically report everything but the fact that the woman who was shot was wielding a knife and trying to stab someone. They omitted that.
Right.
So you've got 200, 300 words on here stoking outrage, maximizing engagement on their platform, but devoid of the simple fact that was caught on body cam footage. And it's like, I guess ultimately what makes me so sad about all of this coverage is that our media and social media both just strip all nuance and remove inconvenient facts to stoke division.
Yeah. It's only to try to tear the fabric further apart.
In fact, they're incentivized to do so. They
Absolutely.
make more money, more clicks are generated. And it's just like, I don't know how we tackle this as a society. I think, the vast, vast majority of people are good, and we should be able to talk about these difficult things without our media lying to us constantly to put us at each other's throats.
Absolutely. And causing resentment. And you find fair-minded people immediately jumping to conclusions as a result.
I mean, that's the thing is like, initially you think, oh, it's just like people didn't have all the facts. They didn't know what's going on because the story is always developing. And then what really struck me is like, even once, the video was out and you could see what had happened, what transpired, you still got these wild takes where you had, your blue checks out there saying, well, folks, you got to just let kids have knife fights. Everyone had knife fights when they were growing up, right? No.
Absurd. Absurd.
Fist fights. Yeah, totally.
No,
no.
Yeah. The implication is that you just ought to let them go at it, and I think the worst, actually most irresponsible thing I've seen yet was from LeBron James. He tweets out a picture of the police officer who's allegedly involved in this unfortunate situation in Columbus with the text, "You're next," and an hourglass and hashtag accountability. I mean, he's got, what does he have? He's got millions and millions and millions of followers, right? I mean, the level of irresponsibility in doing something like that before you have the facts and devoid of the facts that you actually know already. I mean, your goal is to try to be divisive. Your goal is to try to tear the social fabric apart. Like, I don't know. Do I have to remind everybody we've been in a pandemic? People are a little nuts, right? We are not ourselves as a society. We've got a lot of work to do to bring people back out of their silos, start hanging out with their neighbors again. For crying out loud, we haven't been able to socialize really. And now you've got people who are working to try to further divide. I mean, there was this, before this situation in Columbus, there was one in Chicago, this Adam Toledo or whatever, where their body cam footage showed, an officer chasing him into an alley and he turned around and shots were fired and turns out he had a gun on him. But like all of the coverage at the beginning was about how yet another unarmed young African-American was killed in the city. And it turns out like a day and a half later, you find out, first of all, the kid's nickname is Little Homicide, and I'm not saying that like what happened to him isn't tragic. It's tragic. All of these are tragic. But if you cover these things in a certain way and you seek to exploit them in a way that makes people angry, it makes people want to take to the streets, you're doing a bigger disservice than anyone. It's really, I wish there was a way we could figure out how to get our hands around it and have logical, serious, significant conversations about it, because there's no question that there are police reform discussions that make sense, right? Tim Scott tried to have one.
That's the thing is everyone needs to remember this fact. Tim Scott introduced a police reform bill and it was filibustered by the Dems. So when they say, why can't we have a bipartisan solution? They killed Tim Scott's police reform bill with a filibuster. And now they're saying the filibuster is Jim Crow 2.0 and Republicans refuse to join them on police reform. It's like and the media will run with it. So you need to remember that this is a political thing that's going on before your eyes, and the media is 100% helping out.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Smug. And it's the reason why you've got, liberals on Twitter saying, oh yeah, knife fights are normal, because they can't just admit what their eyes have seen. Because if they do that, then they lose that perpetual racial outrage that they require to fulfill the rest of their political agenda, right? Like for them to pass HR 1 and blow up the filibuster and do all the stuff that they want to do, they have to use racial resentment on the entire system in order to get that stuff accomplished. And to your point, Holmes, how do we solve for this? How do we deal in facts? I don't know how it's possible. I don't know how it's possible in the current media environment, a 24 hours a day constant news coverage and social media that's always on, where people are incentivized to be first and not right.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it goes beyond just like individuals that can fall prey to the media narrative that's just created because they want their clicks. They don't, at this point, it's pretty clear they don't care what happened. They know which narrative they need for their clicks. But it's not just individuals. You saw so many of these corporations try to jump in on this with Georgia, and some are like backpedaling now because they're like, wait a minute, well, this wasn't what I was told it is. And now, I don't want to lose customers over this. I think it's, number one, it's too late. So a poll came out from Marist, which said, do you support or oppose American companies using their public role, position, or events to influence political, cultural, or social change? 57% oppose. Only 36% support.
Whoops.
Yep. Whoops.
Yeah.
So just like falling into this trap, which the media just completely, lays bare of like, we're here for clicks. We don't care about the truth. Like on CNN, when that kid with the knife had been killed, they said, oh my gosh, she was just completely murdered. And Jake Tapper didn't push back at all. The media has no incentive not to just go for the rage clicks and the rage ratings.
It's really, look, we're going to try. That's why we're going to try on Ruthless to have serious conversations about it. Look, as a conservative, it's difficult because there is an entire industrial complex in politics that is created just to listen to shows like this and to convince everyone that we have some racial animosity, right? So it takes some courage to try to take this stuff on, but we're going to continue to do it. I thought that the conversation we had with Burgess Owens was sort of a precursor to what you saw lay out 2 weeks later in a Senate committee that, you heard it here first, right? And his view of what Jim Crow law actually looks like from somebody who lived through it. And that's the kind of content that we're going to continue to provide here because this is too important to ignore. We love to have fun, but we can't just ignore this stuff entirely because it's really having an impact, and it's super unfortunate.
But I want to pivot here to something a bit lighter, but also because I wanted to try and troll Duncan for a little bit.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you.
So let me give some background on the topic. There's something called Super League, folks. If you're like me and know soccer is not a real sport, you're like, what is Super League?
It's not.
It's not a sport. It's not a sport.
No.
So a group of 12 clubs from across Europe's biggest leagues announced plans to form a new competition called the Super League. The league had plans to offer permanent spots to some of the world's biggest clubs and play matches midweek, while allowing the involved clubs to remain in their domestic competitions. This all you need to know is this is some soccer stuff. And I thought from the beginning, it involves soccer, it will probably fail. And I was right. It failed.
All right. Okay. I got to step in and correct the record here because clearly Smug and Holmes hate soccer. And so they're purposely misleading you. Basically what happened was,
don't go into the D. It's going to bore the hell out of it.
Soccer is so boring.
Look,
it's so boring.
It's just some of the top teams from Italy and the UK and Spain wanted to create this super league basically to appeal to fans outside of Europe. Right. And so, but their domestic leagues sort of freaked out. I mean, as they would. I mean, like, what if the, Patriots and Tampa Bay and the Chiefs all decided they were going to leave the NFL, right? I mean,
but they wouldn't do that because it's America.
Also, football is a real sport.
That's right. That's a good point, Smug. Thank you for airing that.
Soccer is a hobby for weirdos.
Well, it's also a nice vocation, little thing for 6 and 8 year olds.
Yeah, little kids, they want to run around the yard, kick the ball. All right.
My 3-year-old loves it. I mean,
yeah.
Okay. Well, all I'm going to say is that no one gets CTE from soccer. Okay.
Exactly. Not a real sport.
So that it's not a real sport. It's just ridiculous. I mean, soccer combines athleticism, endurance, speed, acceleration, size. I mean,
all those are factors in CTE. That's why NFL is the greatest. You have these enormous people running at insane speeds. Hitting each other.
Look, I love football. I just think you're just unnecessarily dogging soccer because the rest of the world loves it.
This is your most un-American take, in my opinion.
It is. I think it is an American.
I think it's a great sport. I think it's a great
for
sport.
children.
It combines all of those athletic attributes with, hand-eye coordination, footwork. There's just no.
Let me tell you, folks. Sometimes it's a 0-0 match, and it was a great game.
Look. I will acknowledge that, dude. I mean, you obviously NFL football is more exciting than soccer.
Okay, well, maybe I can get you to concede another point. What's up with the flopping like a crappie every time some guy running down?
Well, look, fair, totally fair. The only thing I would say to people who haven't played soccer is in the NBA when they drive to the lane and there's a foul called, right? Imagine you were doing that at top speed and dribbling a ball with your feet. I mean, if you get jostled or somebody touches your foot, you are going to fall. You are going top speed. You are in a full dead out
just top
sprint.
Speed dribbling. I can't help but hear that circus music in my head. That it's hey, the athleticism. You're just
I just heard jostled, which I thought was a particularly apt term for soccer.
I grew up playing soccer. I started playing when I was 5 or 6.
Now the truth comes out.
Yeah. What's the other sports that you played besides soccer?
Lacrosse and football and wrestling.
Okay, well, lacrosse, dude.
Yeah.
I respect that. Lax Bros. Shout out to Lax Bros.
I was trying to get.
Are you trying to say I'm soft? Are you saying I'm soft, Holmes?
No. I'm not trying to say you're. Well, I'm not trying to say you're soft. This is a soft take for sure. Wrestling, I just appreciate your commitment to the singlet, which is, look, it's a tough sport, but the singlet.
Anytime you want to go, pal.
Guy looks great in a singlet.
Honestly, wrestling is a great sport for one reason is it does teach you a lot of discipline growing up.
Yeah, all my friends who are in wrestling, to me, they enjoy it. To me, it just sounded like misery.
It was misery. Honestly, it was misery.
I have to cut weight so I can fight someone.
Yeah, you cut.
That didn't sound. Good for them. And no one can say wrestling sucks. Honestly, that didn't sound fun. At all.
As the program, you guys should appreciate wrestling because it is a quintessential agony of defeat sport. It's
totally
you kill yourself week in and week out. You cut weight because you're going to be under the lights and it's just you and some other guy, and you are scared to death that you'll lose.
You know what? I have some begrudging respect. I would love it if we could eliminate the singlet. The singlet, I can't get over it.
Okay. Well, look, dude, it's the world's oldest sport. Okay. People used to do it naked. So maybe that's an improvement. Yeah. Yes. The Greeks wrestled naked, dude.
See, look, so we're talking about soccer when there are actual sports in the world.
No wonder Rome fell.
That was my segment. It was essentially just a free shot trying to cyberbully.
Everyone just wants to. This segment was titled in the production meeting. Let's cyberbully.
Cyberbully Duncan.
It's fine. I hope somebody defends me on Twitter tomorrow.
I'm glad that America repelled this latest attack from Europe and we defeated the Super League. So
yeah, we'll let you know. At some point, America will get interested in this and we'll take it over. But for the time being, we can allow the Italians and the Spanish and everybody else to do
have fun. Have fun with that.
Enjoy. And Duncan will be there watching, so it'll be perfect.
Great.
We got a game show, guys.
Yeah. Now, speaking of a real sport,
yeah,
a fan favorite, folks. We got King of the Hill.
Absolutely. Let's do it, huh?
Holmes, who do you have this week?
Well, I've got the defending champion, my friend, Bill Crystal. He's not going anywhere. He's been there since February.
Let's go.
And he is a fierce competitor. Last time I tried with Jen Rubin, the Brainworm Queen, met defeat at the hands of Bill Crystal. So I'm going to go with another perennial favorite, folks. I'm going with Matthew Dowd.
Wow.
She can't. So here, I think this is an interesting selection for a variety of reasons. No question that Rubin has a higher upside on a week-to-week basis, but she can't get it done against Crystal. She's tried twice.
It's shocking. It's really shocking. It's wild how King of the Hill rolls. I mean, it's mano y mano, head to head. It could be the greatest sport.
Let's get on with this.
All right, let's head down ringside.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. It's time for King of the Hill and tonight's rematch of champions. In the red corner, fighting out of his own Twitter account, a former champion standing 5 feet 9 inches tall, Matthew Mel Pattern Dowd. And now, in the blue corner, fighting out of a cruise ship in the Persian Gulf, standing 5 feet 4 inches tall, and current champion of the world, Bill All-Time Crystal.
Oh, fantastic. What a treat.
It's just so good. I love the Jimmy Lennon Jr. Okay, so if I recall, I start.
You start first because you are the defending champion. And for our listeners, again, if you're a new listener and you haven't played this game before, Holmes gets 3 tweets, Smug gets 3 tweets. I serve as judge and jury. And the winner of the best, 2 out of 3 is the winner of King of the Hill.
Okay. Bill Crystal, April 16th, 10:15 p.m. So you know he's into the sauce by now.
Allegedly.
Our
lawyers will thank you.
Yeah, okay. Kevin McCarthy is the piano player in the House Republican brothel. Dude, the guy's so strong.
I mean, my takeaway is like K-Mac rules, honestly. Awesome.
I mean, it's just hot.
I love the imagery.
So this is Matthew Dowd, April 20th, and he was probably into something else. Matthew Dowd, if folks are worried about protests and problems in aftermath of a Chauvin verdict, maybe city, county, state leaders should go ahead and pass reforms of policing now and fundamentally restructure police forces so they reflect the values of humanity and justice. Honestly, if people are worried about protests, why don't you just do what the mob says? Like, you don't have to be worried about riots if you just give what the rioters want. Right, guys? Great take.
It's a pretty good take. The idea that a rioting group of people are going to be satisfied by legislation.
It's like, folks, I've been listening to the rioters. I think if we meet their demands, the riots will end.
Here's my 4-point plan to stop the riot.
Yeah. Step 1, do what the riots want. Okay. All right.
I think what Smug has highlighted here is when you're the challenger, getting to go second is huge. You get to go second twice in round 1 and round 3.
Yeah.
And so, what he was able to do is really throw a hot fire take in round 1. And the judge and jury has decided he has won.
Let's go. I know I needed that. Because here's the thing, folks. I've gotten experience when Holmes and Crystal's a deadly combination. He knows Crystal's strengths and weaknesses. He plays those cards well. I think I've lost like 2 in a row to Holmes. So I'm not taking any risks this time, folks.
I think it's like 3 or 4. Crystal has been,
she's been going nonstop, dude, with Crystal.
Absolute king of the hill. But okay, I was really counting on the brothel getting me there. But okay, I'll shuffle a deck. Bill Crystal, 10:41 p.m. again, way into the sauce, allegedly. April 16th. Straightforward from here. 1, Castro quits. 2, we offer Cuba sanctions relief and investment contingent on political and economic liberty for the Cuban people. 3, free and fair elections are held. 4, a free and democratic Cuba applies for U.S. statehood. 5, El Estado de Cuba.
Smug,
Smug,
just throw the round.
This is a throwaway. I mean, this is a wild take, but that's just like, I mean, who was shocked that Crystal's like, let's just take over a country and demand they join America? Like, the reason it hits so hard is this comes from the soul. It's like in his bones.
As a state. Like,
he wants it so bad.
He reads like one article about Cuba, and immediately the guy,
he's
the
like,
neocon that he is just like Bay of Pigs round 2. Let's go.
Greeted as liberators.
It's the one thing he won't change. It's incredible.
I gotta apologize to the listeners. The judge and jury sort of violated.
It's on, dude. That's a fire take. I mean, this is normally the one I'm going to drop from Dowd would be wild, you know. So like it's kind of like after in between tasting bourbons or whatever, you like, you know, you smell some of the coffee beans, you get a sip of water.
Yeah.
Because on its own, this is a brainworm take. Matthew Dowd. April 16th. The president should leave the White House flag at half-staff until the Senate passes gun reform.
Oh, dude, I love that take, and you're right.
Any other day, dude.
That is such an awesome take. Like I haven't talked about this on the program, but I've had a secret take on this. Is that like in democratic government, you just leave the frickin' little flag at half-staff. Just leave it there.
It's his thing, dude.
I'm surprised. I mean, Smug, I'm surprised that was your throwaway. Honestly, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
I love it because it's sort of like your classic Dowd take, and that is like theatrical and performative. Yeah. You know, it's like somebody he binged West Wing last night.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna tweet this.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, look, it obviously goes to Holmes. Just an incredible take. I you know what I kind of like about this is Holmes kind of rope-a-doped you. He was like, "Oh man, I lost round 1."
Yeah,
he has an ace.
I really didn't expect that. I did not expect that.
Well, I had to bring. There's no way I could have risked not going to round 3, so I had to bring the Thunder.
Yeah.
That was originally going to be my closer.
There's so many tactics involved in King of the Hill, folks.
Yeah.
That was originally going to be my closer because I thought that was a walk-off.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, so now I go back. I'm going first.
Yeah.
All right, 8:20 a.m. This is a morning situation, so a little different perspective. As I said to Brian Williams on 11th Hour last night, which, by the way, I mean, let me just pause there. This is what this guy does now. He goes on the 11 o'clock show on MSNBC.
Sad.
Boy, the mighty have fallen. As I said to Brian Williams on 11th Hour last night, the 2024 GOP nomination fight between Donald Trump and Liz Cheney is going to be lit.
Wow.
I mean, it's like, that's just like the left wet dream, right? Is like, how do you tie the Republican Party in absolute knots, refighting 2020 rather than 2024? It's just, it's a perfect, and what I love about it with Crystal is that for the entirety of his professional career, he's never gotten anything in politics right. The entire.
Wow. Yeah.
He's been wrong about everything in politics that he's ever talked about. The guy's the worst campaign predictor or that I've ever seen in my life. And like, this is a perfect fit for that.
I got a nuke. I got a nuke, man.
Oh.
I saved it. Matthew Dowd. Fact. The greatest danger to American citizens is not radical Muslim terrorists. It is domestic white supremacist terrorists. This is a far graver danger of anything that we have faced since Pearl Harbor. So we're talking about like 9/11, COVID, like you name it. We have not had a problem close
The Cuban
to
Missile
this.
Crisis.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we're only going to get nuked, but that is nothing in Dowd's mind.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, I got
This guy used to do this for a living. People used to pay him for his opinions on
Who
politics.
used to pay him for that?
Poor Schwarzenegger even did.
Oh, Jesus.
He got more than the contract on that one, though.
Am I right, folks?
Hey-o.
I mean, look here. So you got Bill Kristol. I like this tweet because it's liberal catnip, right? It's like it's sort of this wish casting take of like, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? Sort of thing. It's of course totally divorced from reality,
But he believes it. That's the thing. He believes it.
He believes it. Right. But if you've learned anything from working professionally in politics, is that 3 years out, you have no idea what we're going to be talking about. But he's already set the table. He knows where all the chess pieces go. Which is incredible. And to your point, the exact opposite will then happen because he's the worst predictor of anything. That Dowd take, it just can't be ignored.
It's literally nuclear. The guy was like, Cuban Missile Crisis, big deal, bro.
If you would have ended it before Pearl Harbor, I could have fought this to a draw.
Yeah.
But Pearl Harbor, I mean, Dowd
the guy
wins.
gave us like 70 years of history.
Dowd wins. Dowd has dethroned Bill Kristol.
You know what? I accept, I concede the idea that today white supremacists are more dangerous than the days of the open Ku Klux Klan in communities across this country is absolutely freaking nuts.
And he's saying since Pearl Harbor, man, since Pearl Harbor,
Right.
post Pearl Harbor, we had the Nazis, man, when they had V2s. And then the Cold War, like all of that, no big deal, bro. No big deal.
No.
And it was toe to toe. It was a fight to the finish.
I concede.
That was
You
a
are very, very
great
well
episode.
deserved.
Great King of the Hill.
Great King, it always is. You're back on top, my friend, and it's been a long time. So I salute you for your effort.
Dowd got it done. Let's go.
He did. All right, let's get to a big interview. Senator Mike Lee, let's get right to it. I want to welcome to the program someone we're a huge fan of, Republican Senator from Utah, Senator Mike Lee. Senator, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you, Josh.
You are one of the more consistent conservatives that we have in all of Congress, and we really appreciate that throughout. You've been making some interesting moves lately that I want to talk to you about. One of them feels kind of personal to me and a lot of listeners of the program with Major League Baseball. I'm a big baseball fan, and I know a lot of our listeners are big baseball fans. And what Rob Manfred did in moving the All-Star game out of Georgia for purely political reasons just sort of broke a lot of us. It sort of woke us to the woke corporate culture. And then I see, a couple of days later, you introduced a very serious piece of legislation that would revoke the antitrust exemption that they've enjoyed, I think, dating back to the 20s or something like that. Can you help explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah, sure. Consumers as a whole benefit when businesses compete. Competition tends to increase quality and tends to bring down prices. And baseball is no different in this regard. In fact, a professional sports league should be able to appreciate, perhaps better than most businesses, all the benefits of competition, because they're all about competition and increasing the quality of the sport and the entertainment value of the sport when competition's better. But instead of appreciating the value of competition, Major League Baseball has sort of gone the opposite direction and has abused its judicially fabricated antitrust immunity to suppress wages and to divide up markets for decades. In fact, since 1922, when the Supreme Court of the United States decided a case called Federal Club versus National League. And they've been using that to engage in conduct that's plainly illegal and sometimes criminal in any other industry. But they've gotten away with this because Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. And the majority of the Supreme Court at the time, back in 1922, just decided to make it that way. They didn't have any basis in text to do it. They just decided that it would be. And so look, Josh, we should have done this decades ago. Yeah. But when a billion-dollar business or a multi-billion-dollar business starts engaging in a form of political extortion, it becomes even more pressing.
That's right.
Get rid of their special treatment.
That's right. I mean, this comes up every so often. I remember in the early 2000s, I had first gotten to the Hill, and they were talking about contracting teams in Major League Baseball, and about half the country went absolutely wild because they're moving in a lot of rural markets, essentially. And this came up, and it was very seriously debated. But I don't know that it's been this seriously debated since then. It seems to me like you could have some support for that point of view.
Yeah, we're gaining some support, especially as people stop and ask the question, wait, they're exempt? They're exempt from antitrust? Why? One of the things that brought this to mind is, as you noted, when they ended their contract with Atlanta, decided to move it somewhere else, I thought that is really strange. And that is the behavior of a company that operates without competition. Absolutely. Only somebody without competition would do that because it's such a brazen act that really doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, that was my first reaction too. It's just absolutely arrogant, right? If you had absolutely nothing to lose, you would make a decision like that.
Right? By the way, Josh, just as a baseball fan, I would throw out the fact that something about this seemed odd to begin with. I wonder if Major League Baseball already had some other reason why it wanted to move the All-Star game to Colorado. It doesn't make any sense if you're going to move it out of Atlanta, ostensibly in response to this election integrity law passed by the Georgia legislature. Why would you move it to Colorado? I mean, Colorado has election laws that in many ways are as restrictive as, if not more restrictive than, that of Georgia. Maybe they always wanted to move it there to begin with, and this was just a pretext. I don't know.
You know, it's interesting because they were very quick on the draw. You're right. I mean, they were the leading edge of companies that were taking sort of forceful action on that. There were a couple of others, but they were certainly way out front, and they moved it right away. And like you said, Colorado, very stringent voter ID laws, which you can't tell because Manfred's statement of what he opposed in Georgia didn't illustrate anything, right? He didn't say a single thing that he actually objected to.
Right. And look, the American people want to have their elections matter. They understand that we want to make it easier to vote, and we want to make it harder to cheat. There's nothing about easy to vote, hard to cheat that anyone can object to meaningfully. And yet they've managed to try to spin this into something else. And it's really quite shameful. The American people realize the fact that, look, you've got to show a photo ID when you get on an airplane, which makes it doubly ironic that Delta Airlines was part of the crew jumping on this crazy bandwagon. With Delta Airlines, I mean, even before you get to TSA, if you want to check a bag, you've got to show up and prove who you are with a photo ID. Anyone who has flown Delta Airlines knows that to be the case. And yet showing an ID to vote is somehow wrong. I don't get that, especially when you consider the fact that everyone is disenfranchised when you allow people to vote who are not supposed to.
And nobody in the corporate space will pull out the voter ID. That's the activist space, right? Everybody in the activist space says, well, voter ID is the real problem because they can't make an argument against vote by mail. It was actually expanded. They can't make a argument about early vote. It was actually expanded under the Georgia law. So it's really kind of about voter ID, but none of the companies want to talk about that, right? Because they all require voter ID.
Right. That's why they won't talk about it, even though it's probably the lifeblood that's animating all of this angst among activists.
Yeah.
They don't want that. And, they're somehow managing, many in the activist community are also messaging that we have to do this. And they're trying to message the Republican Party as somehow being against voting rights and against the Voting Rights Act, which doesn't make any sense because the opposite is true. But they're managing to make it that way because they're mad that a state like Georgia can pass a law without a law that improves election security and integrity without going through the pre-clearance process in Washington, D.C. Right. Years ago, that would have been the case before the Supreme Court intervened and said that there were aspects of the Voting Rights Act, the application of Section 5, over time had become unconstitutional in its application. They're angry that the Supreme Court reached that conclusion. And they understand that this law passed in Georgia would have had to be pre-cleared by the now Biden Justice Department. That probably wouldn't have been pre-cleared. And so they're mad about it, and they're using every tool at their disposal to try to denigrate it.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. That's exactly right. I'm wondering if, taking a step back just at what we're seeing across corporate America, how concerned you are at watching the power that the left has exerted here over the last few months. It's really gone on longer than that, but certainly during the Biden administration, to try to economically pressure communities to basically support the Democratic agenda. I mean, this isn't really about sort of an ideological discussion or something that fits people's business model better one way or another. I mean, you expect people to advocate and lobby on behalf of policies that would improve their company, right? But that's not what's happening here. And they're going far outside that to try to basically enact a Democratic agenda.
Right. Which begs the question, why? Especially when you consider that a lot of the big businesses doing this, they're big because, and in the sense that they operate nationwide. And if you look nationwide, at any given time, you run the risk, if you alienate one political party or the other among your customers, you run the risk of alienating about half of them if you take a political side. So that's why this doesn't make sense. And it's one of the reasons why you tend to see it more among those businesses that lack meaningful competition. In the case of Major League Baseball, it's because of their antitrust exemption. In the case of Delta Airlines, perhaps it's because aggressive moves toward consolidation in recent years, coupled with the natural regulatory and other restrictions on entry getting into the airline industry. They realize that most customers fly particular routes such that most of the time they're not going to have a whole lot of options. And so they've got a somewhat captive audience of customers. And so they say, well, why not? Let's do it.
Amazing. I want to switch gears with you because I got to get to the Supreme Court. You've been in the middle of so many Supreme Court fights and just an absolute warrior for conservatives in getting all of those judges who in the Trump years and Supreme Court fights and whatnot. What do you make of the Democrats' latest push to try to pack the court?
Well, it's like any other effort to pack the court. This is an act of severe, arrogant legislative overreach. And those who are behind this effort spit in the face of judicial independence. So not that I'm one who believes in the legitimacy of the presidentially informed Supreme Court Commission, but how can they even consider doing this? Those who are backing this legislation, those who introduced this legislation just recently, before even hearing a report from that commission, before the letterhead for that commission was even printed. But, you know, it also flies in the face of an age-old understanding that our federal court system, despite its faults, despite its flaws, is the best of its kind anywhere in the world. And we've long had an understanding that one of the reasons that that's the case is that while some nominations to the Supreme Court of the United States end up being controversial, by and large, the justices themselves have not behaved in a political way. Yeah, in close cases dealing with hot button political issues, sometimes you end up with a 5-4 or 6-3 alignment where you can see some correlation between the president who nominated them and how they vote. It's a relatively rare phenomenon, actually.
And relatively new. And relatively new, too. I mean, that's...
And relatively new. Until Robert Bork was nominated in 1987, these things were not political circuses in any way, shape, or form. So it's quite remarkable that the Supreme Court has not become a political body in that time period. But one of the reasons for that is that we've had now for 152 years a 9-member Supreme Court, and we understand that it's a non-political body. Now, Joe Biden is one who agreed that court packing was bad. Back in 1983, he said that it was a, quote, boneheaded idea. In fact, he went on to say it's a terrible, terrible mistake to put into question the independence of the most significant body. And here's where his quote got me a little bit. He said, the most significant body, including Congress, in my view.
Right.
An odd thing to say for a lawmaker, for a legislator who sworn an oath to the Constitution, is saying that the Supreme Court is more significant, but whatever. He said that was a boneheaded idea, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed with him.
Yeah.
She went so far as to specifically say that when the last time this was meaningfully attempted, when Franklin D. Roosevelt tried it back in 1937, she said, the same is true today as it was then, that if anything, packing the Supreme Court would make it more partisan, and that we shouldn't do it. She said it was a bad idea then, and it is now. So, look, sadly, Josh, there's nothing in the Constitution that expressly prohibits this. In fact, Congress does have the power to make decisions like this. But sometimes you have to step beyond the question of whether we could and ask whether we should. And they've gone beyond that. You know as well as I that if they do this, it'll become a tit for tat. They'll raise it, then we'll raise it. Before long, it'll look like the intergalactic Senate in the Star Wars movies, and it'll be this bizarre partisan combination and a mess.
You know, if comfortably smug is seated on the Supreme Court, we've gone too far.
Yes. You know, I like the idea of comfortably smug sitting on the Supreme Court. That's a good idea.
I think it is too. He might have to reveal his identity, which is tough, but he might be willing to do it under the right circumstances.
Paper bag, like the unknown comic famous back in the early 80s.
One more piece of official business. The Biden administration started off just entirely partisan, right? And I guess you shouldn't be surprised because, we've seen the way that Democrats have operated in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And so, obviously when they had their opportunity to get hands on power, they were going to try to utilize it. But I've been a little surprised at how audacious it actually is. And I've made the argument that there's an awful lot about this pandemic that goes beyond emergency use. It is actually sort of the way that liberals would like to govern in perpetuity, right? They tell you when you can go to work, who's essential, whose kids can go to school, what grades what they can learn, what curriculum we can provide, right? Managing every detail of the average American's life. I'm wondering if you can if you think that has substance. Is that kind of what they're trying to do, you think?
Yeah. And I think they're doing it. I think that they believe that they're not doing that maliciously, that they're doing it in a benevolent sort of way. Alexis de Tocqueville described this phenomenon in Democracy in America when he talked about the fact that when a government gets too big and too present in people's lives, you're not necessarily preparing them to flourish. You're preparing them to live sort of like farm animals or something like that, where every need is provided for and there are a limited number of decisions for them to make. And I'm butchering the delivery on this, but you get the idea. But I think there are those in today's Democratic Party who genuinely believe that what we need is more government. And I think in doing that, they behave, perhaps not maliciously, but very naively and even more foolishly in thinking that. Because we have to remember, Josh, what government is. Government is nothing more and nothing less than force. It's just the official sanctioned use of collective coercive force. That's it. Government doesn't love you. It can't hug you. It lacks the ability to know you because it's just force. And sometimes when we attribute to it the qualities of omnipotence and omniscience and omnipresence, as the left increasingly seems to do, we're making government the new idolatry, as it were. And it will always disappoint us because it has one tool and one tool only, which is force. Now, look, people on the left will always come back to that by saying, no, look at all the good programs that the government has. Look at what it does that isn't force. You're looking only at the Department of Defense and at law enforcement. No, that's not really true. I mean, everything government does, it does because it has access to resources, which it has the ability to retrieve only because it has the power of force.
Yeah.
So what compels people to pay their taxes? And so you've got to be very careful. Force, government force, is a little bit, you could say it's fairly analogous to, say, water, fire, oxygen, electricity, all things that are important that we rely on for day to day to maintain life and quality of life. But things that, if not carefully managed, can be destructive and even deadly. That's what government is. We need it to protect life, liberty, and property, to make sure we don't kill each other and take each other's stuff. If we stick to that, we'll do well.
That's really well said. You're going to turn some folks into libertarians here this afternoon. I love it. I love it. Listen, we got to get to the fun stuff here because I got to get you out of here. And this is where the rubber meets the road with the minions. They pay close attention to these questions, Senator. So the first one is, your last meal on earth, if you can choose it, what would it be?
All right. So it would have to involve something very unhealthy. Without question, there would be pizza. There would be ice cream. There would be really good French fries. There would be a lot of fat involved. I'm also imagining some type of deep fried pork belly.
Oh, I like it.
Whether a thick sliced bacon or something. But yeah, I've given some thought to this over the years. Every time you read an article about what prisoners order just before they're about to be executed for their last meal, it makes you wonder, what if that were me, or what if I otherwise knew what my last meal was going to be? What would I eat? It'd be something very unhealthy along the lines of what I just described.
Yeah, all the
I think as much as anything, there would be a lot of ice cream.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Grassley said he would do ice cream with a side of pork chops. So I think you're sort of on the same wavelength with that.
Right. Well, in Grassley's case, I'm sure there was corn involved and maybe some corn-based ethanol. I don't know.
He just drinks the ethanol. All right. Question 2. If you weren't in politics, if you were not a United States Senator, what would you be doing with your life?
Appellate litigation, of course. I mean, what everybody wants to do. It's what every kid dreams of doing when it grows up. It's what all the kids want to be these days.
Just as sexy as it gets.
I love this stuff. You spend months writing an appellate brief, talking about some esoteric aspect of the law, and then you get to go argue it, and you get paid for doing it. It's fun.
I love that. Genuine joy. I could see it in your eye. All right. So the final question, this is, there's no right answer, but it divides people, and you'd be surprised at how revealing it actually is. What motivates Mike Lee more, the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat?
I'd like to say thrill of victory. I mean, look, both can be motivators. There's no question about it. But one's best side is usually brought out by the pursuit of a victory, by what one wants. It's what puts one in the driver's seat. It's what enables a person to act rather than to be acted upon. It's what differentiates liberty from captivity. So yeah, definitely the thrill of victory.
I love it. Well, you were always a glass half full type of guy, a sunshine warrior. We appreciate it for you. You're in cycle, and because you're a consistent conservative, we've had liberals talking about going after you. If we can go to your website, I don't even know what it is, but we'll plug it later in the program unless you have it now.
LeeForSenate.com. That's LeeForSenate.com. Can appreciate support. A little goes a long way, and really grateful that you're willing to visit LeeForSenate.com.
You're a gentleman, and you've got that down. I appreciate it, Senator Lee. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Josh.
So, typically we pride ourselves on not being the Federalist Paper crowd. But, there's something about Mike Lee where he layers this stuff in, this intellectual conservatism it makes it palatable, and you can actually kind of learn something. He is undoubtedly one of the smartest, most well-read constitutional conservatives I've been around in a long time.
And here's the thing too. So like as the Guardian, according to the Guardian, I'm a lawyer. So why not put me on the Supreme Court? I think, we wait a few years, Breyer steps down, Smug for the court. That's a good idea. I promise to be a sound jurist. I'll just do what Clarence Thomas tells me to do.
I think what we should do, you'll recall that when at the end of the Republican nomination fight was when all of the candidates put out their short lists of who they would nominate.
Yeah.
If
man.
Right.
We gotta start putting pressure on folks.
I think we have
to. You're on Ruthless. I gotta be like, listen. I mean, maybe you're running for president, but if you were, am I on the short list?
It's gonna be. You'll fill it full of these luminaries, and if you're not in the part of it, we're gonna oppose you. It's just that's all there is to it.
Can you imagine Smug's first opinion?
Yeah,
it would be
140 characters.
It would be
like, this is some lib bullshit.
It'd be that Giants meme,
Yes, dude.
Feelings
over facts. Totally.
Feelings, intuition, and magic.
Magic, just
feelings, intuition, and magic.
That's the cornerstones.
Sound decision making.
God, truly, this is my solemn oath. If I were put on the Supreme Court, I would just do what Clarence Thomas tells me. I would hold the line, folks. I would love that job.
Oh yeah,
I love it.
That would be an easy job, right? You just
Great job,
Clarence. Which way do we go on this? Up or down?
I don't know. They all have their offices and such. So I'm just chilling in there and tweeting all day. And then when it's time for court time, I'm like, so Clarence, what's good? Just tell me. Am I voting yes or no?
We have a problem here. Smug has not filled a single vacancy in his office.
I'm sitting right next to Clarence, just copying off his paper, dude, the whole time.
And Alito's like, nice work, pal.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Nice work, pal. I love it.
On a real note, though, it's we aren't the Federalist Papers podcast, but I am glad to know we have people like Mike Lee in the party, because
totally
we have to have some of these people out there, that have the credentials, to advance our agenda. So I'm really glad he came on.
And
I agree.
Thank you so much to Senator Mike Lee for coming on the show. I mean, we've been on just a spree of amazing guests.
We're not done yet. We have great week planned next week, including one very big guest who was kind enough to change their schedule.
Huge.
Because of my COVID situation. My COVID, I don't have COVID. I've been vaccinated, which I'm not sure isn't worse than COVID.
But
get your vaccine.
Get your vaccines, folks. Another banger of an episode. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.